So the first question I was going to ask you is, how's a guy with a degree from MIT and a engineering background end up running sales at HubSpot?
Completely accidental, serendipitous. I mean, my journey leading up to MIT was very much kind of a passion for entrepreneurship. I started my career in the late 90s, and believe it or not, for most of you in the room, you were probably in elementary school or whatever. Entrepreneurship was not very well known as a career path for someone that went to a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 school. I think it was kind of known as your neighbor started a plumbing business, or or maybe when you were older and had experience, you might start a PR firm or something. And obviously around that time, the whole late 90s was exploding, and I just started following it. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I jumped ship after 2 years at Accenture, and a couple of partners had started a mobile company down in New York, and I did that for a couple of years. It was one of those 10 people, scaled to 200, raised a bunch of money, scaled back to 10 people after 2001. So it didn't lead to anything successful, but the learnings were amazing, and the validation of this is my passion, I want to commit my professional career to it, was great for me. And
but did you have to figure out sales? Were you I'm an engineer and I have to figure out how I get pain and how I talk to people? And
yeah, a little bit. I mean, at that time I wasn't doing a ton of selling. It was just I want to do entrepreneurship. So that led to I should do a good MBA, and I went to MIT, and I figured out through there that I need to find my place in the entrepreneur ecosystem, and I don't think I loved product enough to want to go in that direction. So it was really between sales and marketing, and I loved marketing because it was a little more conducive to what you learn out of MBA with analytics and all that kind of stuff. I love sales because I love the front line, talking with people, and I knew I was going to be starting a family, and you can get paid a little more in sales. So that was the trade-off. And then the HubSpot thing just kind of fell in my lap. I actually started my own company, raised $1 million for it. And Dharmesh, our co-founder, was one of my investors, and I just helped him one day a week as part of the deal. And then Brian came in. It was literally Dharmesh and I sitting in a room for 3 months talking about what he wanted to do. He recruited Brian in, and Brian was just just go sell. If I have you for one day a week, just go sell. And that was really what caused me to go into it. And then, a year later, I couldn't get my startup going, and they were about to explode, and they wanted me to come in and run sales. So that's how I ended up there. My dad was actually a sales coach, so he was pretty instrumental in the early days of the belly-to-belly stuff to teach me how to navigate more of a consultative sell. I think most MBAs and most people who haven't been in sales, you perceive selling as the pitch master, very convincing. There's this mystique. They hypnotize you, and then you buy a product, and that's what selling is, and you can't predict it.
There's a thing I think it was with there's a thing we used to study Sandler sales, and there's a story about the vacuum guy comes to your house and just dumps a bunch of shit on your floor, and he's like, "How are you going to clean that up?"
Yeah. Dude, it's so funny. I actually did that in my teenage. I sold for this company, Filter Queen. And it was it was literally a 2-hour pitch. It was the most awkward thing. So I guess I had a little sales experience before, but so literally, I don't know why, responded to an ad in a paper, and it was this patented thing where it was an amazing vacuum cleaner, but it was $1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. It just you literally would drop all the stuff down, and you where's your vacuum cleaner? And you take it out and you go over it 20 times. And then you put a little filter on the Filter Queen and just go over it once and show them all the dust it's missing. Then you drop down this steel ball, and you'd suck it up with it and just go through, and it wouldn't break it. So,
and then you just walk out, and they're like, "Wait, Mark!"
You literally would. None of the sales would occur. You'd be like, "I'm sorry, I just need to use your phone." I swear to God, this is what happened. I just need to use your phone, and you'd call them up. Make sure you call them from where they could hear you. And you'd call the main office, and you'd come up with some story about how this is the reason why they're not buying. And then you'd be like, "Oh, really? You can do that?" And you'd go back and I just talked to my boss, and they can give you that was really.
I just got approval
selling.
from my boss, or 20% off.
Right,
Yeah.
And that's not what I quickly learned was selling. The way I break it down as simply as possible is, it's about quickly building trust with a complete stranger, whether it's over the phone or in person, so that you earn the right to figure out what their biggest nightmares are today. What are the biggest problems they're working on? What are the biggest opportunities that they're chasing?
Yeah.
And then ask yourself, do I solve that well? And if I solve that well, tell the story about your solution in a way that connects with that. And if you don't solve it well, either they're focused on the wrong problem and you got to educate them on that, or they are, and it's just like refer them to one of your friends. That's really the simplest way I can talk about that.
So how does that I want to talk about like how that works in the early days when it's kind of like, so when you were at HubSpot, the team was what? Couldn't have been more than 5 people. As you, Volpe, Dharmesh, and Brian, basically.
Yep.
So that sales pitch is great, but like at the same time, wasn't it still the Wild West when it came to like startup sales in the early days? Like the product's always breaking, you don't know who your good customers are. Like how do you take that stuff and apply it to, almost where we're at the early stages, which is like, it's not easy to instrument everything. There isn't always a process.
Yeah, so I think anytime you have these types of questions, it's interesting to dive into what happened for us, our contacts, what we learned from it, and then see if we can abstract it out either to you folks or just a general startup, right? So for us, we're talking about 07, 06. We're talking about crushing the content marketing, so there's tons of people coming to us. We're talking about SEO is just coming out of like its early stages of being adopted by like the media companies and becoming mainstream. So there was just a lot of obsession over Google. And that was, ranking high in Google, and no one knew how to do it. So that was really the hook that we had, was we had a lot of folks kind of coming to us. In the very early stages, from like 0 to 30 customers, it's all referral-based and network-based. You guys know a ton of people. You don't need to cold call or even deal with like really cold leads at that stage. You should be working with the folks that are your buddies.
Is that always good though? Like, I feel like it could be easy to get 20 people to sign up, but that's not always a good indicator of your future customers, and are these people going to be willing to pay? If you can go door to door and say,
I think you got to have them. You got to get them to pay or have some sort of commitment there. Yeah. Like you lean on the relationships to get the warm foot in the door, and you skip that part of the selling process that I talked about, that building the trust, because they already trust you and they can really pick their brain. And you don't want to you don't want to sell something that's not going to be valuable to them. You want to make sure they have skin in the game. In fact, it'd be nice if you can get moved over to someone that's not your buddy, that might be more of the buyer, right? But at least it gets you in the door. And then after that, again, the hot thing then was, how do I rank in Google? And the conversation was just all about that website strategy, nothing to do with the software. And that was, I don't know if that was right or wrong, but I remember when our second salesperson came in, Dan Tyre, and he was like, all right, this is awesome. Halligan's like, yeah, Roberge has been pitching this stuff for 6 months. It's been going great. Tyre was our top rep at Groove, our last company. Roberge just teach Tyre how to do this. And Tyre's like, okay, great. What are we using? Are we using WebEx? Or are we using GoToMeeting? Where's the pitch deck? And I was like, for what? And he's like, well, how do you demo the product? I was like, demo the product? Like, do you want me to show them the product, or do you want me to close business? Because those are not one and the same. And then they were like laughing about that. It was like,
I have screenshots, maybe.
I don't even want to show them, because that's going to hurt the sale. You know what I mean?
He's over there shaking his head.
This is years before. Years before the DC and Alias regime came in. But so that was kind of interesting. Was when you don't, and honestly, software salespeople over rely on the demo. And when you actually can get something all the way to a close without even showing the product, I mean, that just shows you that you're super focused on the vision, value prop, and their particular problems. And it worked out. I mean, hey, again, our situation was we closed everything on the sun. We closed plumbers. We closed Intuit. Right? We just felt like this mission applied to everyone. We got to 1,000 companies super fast, paying us reasonable $100 a month, not like freemium, thousands of customers. And churn was off the hook, but it was a big enough volume that we could take a step back and say, okay, where's the sweet spot, and then triple down on that.
So when was the moment that you realized, like, holy shit, we're onto something, this is going to be a real big company? Was it a certain number of customers, or just you just like kind of
probably
being
like
in the weeds
last
every day?
week, I would say.
Last week, yeah.
I don't know. It's on
when was the last
degree,
earnings call?
I don't know if there was a time like that. I mean, maybe, honestly, like to some degree, it sounds funny, but standing up in front of the New York Stock Exchange, ringing the bell is like possibly an answer. You know, like, because it's crazy, the whole ride. I mean, you guys are going through it now. Like, even when once you get to 100 customers, you get to 1,000, churn's off the hook. You're crazy. You don't know if you'll be able to come back from that. Every year we hit a problem, whether it was like salesperson morale or product stability. All these things can sink the company. And Dharmesh and especially Brian had a leadership approach, which was, I think, right, and something I learned from them, which was, as entrepreneurs, even when we were 20 million, 50 million, 70 million in revenue, when a huge problem happened, like sales morale, product stability, customer success, they made a bold decision so extreme that it would literally sink the company if it didn't work. But they recognized that that's what it took.
Can you go into one of those, like give a tactical example, whether it's a churn thing or morale or like how you guys...
Yeah, like churn. Let's take churn. That was an early one. We were crushing it. Like we were bringing in customers like crazy. Like I said, 100 to 1,000 customers within like 6 months. But churn blew up. And at the time, we probably had 15, 20 reps. And, you know, we were selling this thing for $200 a month, whatever. They were like, we're doing all annual contracts, annual paid up front. So we went from having to pitch this like really kind of risky product that people didn't know if it worked for $200 a month to having to charge like $3,000 a year up front from landscapers, which is a big deal. And then we completely changed the compensation structure to reward every rep that had great churn, even if they were selling not a lot of software, and seriously penalized every rep who was selling tons of software but had high churn. I mean, you could completely kill the customer flow. You could have a mass exodus of all your salespeople, arguably some of your better ones. But it's like, none of that happened.
So just like more tactically on the sales side. Yeah. So the traditional model was, if you're a sales rep, you just do everything you can to close this deal. Once the deal is over, the money's in the bank. Like, I'm good. I don't need to do anything else.
I've published some of this stuff if you want to see it in like Harvard Business Review, but just like the journey of a sales comp plan as you grow. Like the first one needs to be very hunter oriented. You have no customers. We need customers, right? So it's like you close a $500 a month deal, we'll pay you $1,000, $2 on the dollar, and you keep the commission as long as that company is there for 4 months. After 4 months, it's yours. But if they churn before 4 months, we're taking the whole money back. Perfect hunting plan. 100 to 1,000 customers in 6 months. But the churn rate on the customers was month 1, 0, month 2, 0, month 3, 0, month 4, 0, month 5, huge. Right? So like reps work their comp plan.
Yeah.
Right? So fine, it was great, and then we just switch it to a very retention oriented.
But you can game it that way though, because you're like, oh, I'm gonna schmooze you until month 3, and then I'm out.
You just stay on them,
yeah.
right? And
Mark,
so
how
you
is
can sign
everything?
a 4-month contract. 4-month contract. Never heard of a 4-month contract. No, it's just a 4-month contract. That's what we do here. Like reps will do anything for the plan.
We're changing the game.
Exactly. And so and that's just the first phase. There's multiple phases on that, and it really is. That's one of the underappreciated tool for the CEO, even outside of the sales, is the comp plan. Once you start scaling a sales team, is they typically delegate it to the VP of sales, who implements it from his or her last company. Totally wrong move. It's all about what stage you're at, what behaviors you're trying to drive, what strategically is happening, even outside of sales in the broader company, and how can I work that into my comp plan? Super powerful.
Yeah, well, DC has given this talk a couple times. I think it's kind of related, which is about, we're all about being customer driven, but the only way to really have a customer driven company is to align the incentives of every team to promote customer success. So like, if you say, okay, get me 100,000 visitors to our website this month, like it's easy to game that number and figure out how to do it.
Yes.
But if none of those people turn into happy customers, then that's not the right
Exactly.
alignment.
I think it's like, there's certainly this undocumented field that's cropping up of like across the board metrics driven management, right? Like so much more of the operations can be boiled down to key metrics that we don't appreciate. I think even like you talk on the product side around product success and the power of weekly active users, the power of an NPS that's taken every single month and solving for that, the power of like, taking a small engineering team and assign them to a true adoption number on a particular feature. And on the sales side, how we use metrics to drive the ideal hire, how we align sales and marketing. Like because of probably part of this like data explosion, there's this whole new philosophy around data-driven management that hasn't quite been codified yet, but it's in there.
Yeah, or especially applying it to, probably 20, 30 years ago, you wouldn't try to instrument the sales process with data. You just kind of do things.
You just you hire a 42 long ex-athlete, give him a territory and a pitch book, and
play
tell
some
him
golf.
to go. And that was sales strategy. And it's amazing how many companies still do that. But it's, given all the movements of inside and freemium and easier data collection, there's so much more of a science to it.
How'd you guys keep hiring good people? Like you had a small team, and it's easy enough to find 10, 15, 20 people that you want to work with, but now you have to grow a sales organization of hundreds of reps. How do you keep that bar so high? It gets hard. You're going to hire bad people.
Yeah, pretty early on I realized that, especially in sales, and I think this happens in a lot of situations, like in engineering for sure, maybe not at marketing at HubSpot, or maybe not in customer success because there's a nice brand there, but there wasn't a lot of success in hiring active candidates that were inbound, especially early days. Like when I first had opened up a bunch of recs, I posted job ads on, Monster and LinkedIn, all these places. I think I got 100 resumes within a week or two. I think I did 30 phone screens, maybe 15 interviews, and hired 0 people. And I realized through that process, especially for sales, that great salespeople don't ever have to interview. Right, like KK, Kim Walsh is calling him every quarter and being like, "Are they still on business? Because you always can come back here." And that's what it's the life of a good salesperson is they're getting calls from their ex-boss all the time, like, "Hey, I've gone off to this company," or "You're always invited back." So you never have to dust up put your resume together. You never have to go out and apply a job. You always have those opportunities. So that set up a light bulb for me in recruiting is we need a passive recruitment strategy. We need to get at those passive candidates. And there was a really good recruiter, I forget where he was from, but he said, corporate recruiters, and Keith's the only one here is a good recruiter, so he won't take offense to this, but corporate recruiters, and I hate to generalize, but this is the reputation out there.
I'm not one, so fire away.
Yeah, exactly.
Say what you need.
You hire them in, they don't make the most money, they're on a complete salary, and they don't go after passive candidates. The first thing they do is hire an agency to source for you. They essentially kind of push resumes around, put people between the interview rooms, and gather feedback. Agency recruiters, they're really aggressive. They make a lot of money. Sometimes they're half base, half commission. And they're
That's good.
Yeah, and
people that are listening won't know what just happened, but that is good. Yeah.
I was just posing for the camera. Half base, half commission, and they make a lot more money, and they pound the phone. These are the folks you guys get called on every day and pinned in LinkedIn. Yeah. And so this person told me, build an agency recruitment function within your company, right? And I was fortunate to find a couple recruiters over the years that were Leslie Mitchell. I think she was 28 when I found her. And she was about to leave the agency world to start her own agency. I was like, great, do it in HubSpot. Whatever you had for a vision for your salary, for your strategy, let's talk about that, and let's go build this agency within HubSpot. So that was the key, was going after those passive folks. The last tip I'll give there that's usually pretty popular is the concept of the forced referral, where every company will go out and post, "Hey, $2,500 if you refer a friend, we hire them, etc." But it wasn't until we'd say, "Okay, Dave, I want to meet with you tomorrow for 20 minutes to go through your network. We're connected on LinkedIn. Tonight, I'm going to spend half an hour on all 275 of your connections and go through and search for people who are in Boston that went to good schools, that have 2 or 3 years of sales experience, and we're going to go through that list of 25 people, and you're going to tell me if they're good or not and how well you know them and if you can introduce them." And you'd be amazed in that meeting. It's 5 people were on the list are why didn't I think of her? She's awesome. Of course I can introduce you. So, once you wait a couple months and let that new employee marinate in your culture a little bit, you'd be amazed how that force referral works to get at great talent.
You're just applying the sales mentality to the recruiting process.
You really
know that, yeah.
so many of the way you run through metrics, you're sourcing, you run them through the funnel. So many of the sales philosophies applied to good recruiting.
All right, so maybe let's spend the last 10 minutes talking about this part, which is, so you do this, grow HubSpot, and then you end up taking on HubSpot Sales. What's the official name?
Yeah, HubSpot Sales.
HubSpot Sales, okay.
Yeah, started as Sidekick, now it's HubSpot Sales.
All right,
yep.
like why'd you want to go into spin off a new company inside of HubSpot versus just keep hanging out? And
I'm an entrepreneur, and also it's what Halligan wanted me to do. It's like he wanted to bet really hard on that space and send a signal to the company and the market to go in that direction. And, I think he wanted someone to bring the domain expertise, but also like a modern view on it.
Yeah.
So that was, it was really exciting. I got to team up with C. Todd, Christopher O'Donnell, to learn a ton about the product strategy, which was great. And I got to recruit Brian Belfour to run our marketing side. And gosh, I mean, it's just like you measure an experience like that on how much you learn. And my learning, given the days and the months that went through, was like off the charts to learn about both the product side as well as the growth marketing side.
What did you learn that was different? Because you go from selling something that's $2,500 a month to free.
Yeah, sure.
And it's completely different.
It's just an appreciation around this go-to-market strategy, and I think again this is an area that's just starting to be codified a bit. Of when we started HubSpot, I think we regret not taking a swing at more of a freemium approach in the early days. Yeah. Part of it was due to our lack of understanding. Part of it was due to just like the consumer wasn't as Uberized, as they are today, if that's the right word. And this model hadn't really been.
Well, it's actually like it's the exact opposite of the sales process you initially described, which is you never see the product, you buy, and then you use it. Exactly. Whereas this model is like, go ahead, test the product, then call me if you need something.
Exactly. So it's all about low time and effort to value, stuff that you guys focus on a lot. And in the marketing vision, it was challenging because it's really like there is no low time and effort to inbound marketing. Like that's the nature of the vision, is it takes many months to extract value. So it's really difficult to come up with that. Further, it's really difficult to start here to $300 a month and go backwards once you have thousands of customers. So this has been we learned from that and got to start from the ground up on all these lessons with HubSpot Sales, built Sidekick, hundreds of thousands of weekly active users, and how do you build a sales team around that? So I wrote an interesting article about how even the industry, like so many natural connotations around sales management contradict and hurt the freemium process. So let me give you an example. Most sales compensation plans reward sales reps more for the first dollar in revenue from a new customer than for upgrade revenue, right? So because it just makes sense. It's really hard to open up a door and get someone to start spending money with you than it is to say, you're already spending money with us, just spend more.
What does that mean? They get a bigger percentage of the initial, like you might get 50% versus 20%.
And then it's less, that's a very common standard in sales. And it makes sense given where things come from. That puts salespeople at odds with a freemium model. Because the whole point of a freemium model is to reduce friction so that folks can get engaged with the product, gain trust with it, prove value, and then expand. And so what you find is you as a product and marketing side, you implement this beautiful low friction engagement process, and you get reps calling in being like, the customer's like, I just want to start with the basic product and 2 seats. And the rep is like, no, you need to start on enterprise with 100 seats because that's how their compensation is designed. And there's a whole bunch of standards like that. Yeah. So that's an example of what I did was when we put our first 4 reps into the HubSpot sales arena, first off, I chose folks who weren't looking for, I want to make 200% of my compensation. I chose folks who were like, I really just want to be part of something new and fresh and figure it out. Right. That was really important. And then once we hit our stride and went into the next year, Halligan was like, all right, this is great. Hire 20 reps, let's go. And we sat with finance and figured out what the revenue stream would look like if we hired 20 reps and went. I was like, guys, here's the deal. I'll take the revenue goals, fine. I'll take the expense, fine. I don't want to hire the 20 reps. Give me a second. What I want to do is tell our 4 guys that the plan is to hire 20 reps. but I want to give you guys the opportunity to spread this demand amongst yourself and raise your productivity, as opposed to get really creative, use technology, use your smarts, and try to be 3 times more efficient as opposed to hiring these 20 folks. Now, every quarter we'll look at it, and if you fail, I'm going to have to make the hires. Just means less demand for you guys. And I also comp them less for the opening sale and more for the follow-on sale. And one of our reps, who's like a real aggressive guy, he was like, hey, Mark, well, that means if I get someone on the phone and they want to buy 50 seats, I'm just going to sell them 2 this month and 48 next month. I was like, fantastic. Because that's exactly what I want. I don't want to take the churn risk of 50 seats that might be a bad fit, and no one's going to upgrade 48 seats if it doesn't work. Yeah. Right? So there's a whole bunch of
it changes the whole philosophy of this. Sales becomes the coach and the marketing or whatever sales expert to help drive that adoption.
Exactly.
All right, last one I wanted to get to before we do Q&A. Yeah. So we're at Drift. Our big learning is a big theme for like our culture. What's the last book that you read that you'd share with us?
I'm actually in the process of listening to Influence at Work by Robert Cialdini, which is exciting because I have an email in my inbox from him. Yeah. I'm going to have lunch with him next week out in Austin. So it just happened to. Have you guys read that one? Really good stuff. He's like one of those academics. He's down in Arizona State that has done tremendous research in the world of sales, mostly in persuasion. Has some really good lessons that come from it. And I just noticed that he was keynoting right after I'm keynoting a speech, and I reached out to him, and I think we're going to have lunch next week.
What are you going to talk to him about?
I'm actually going to talk to him a lot about the move to academia and explore that a little bit. But I'll also probably try to hit him up to come speak at Inbound this year and do a blog article and see if he's interested in that as well.
Cool. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
No worries. Yeah, thanks for having me. Right.